Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. Hope everybody is doing well. So today's video is going to be all about self-education, and yes, I am going back to preschool. In short, I am just really aware of gaps in my education and I want to fill those gaps in. So today I want to talk to you guys a little bit about what my plan is. I actually have kind of two tracks that I'm going on. One is the adult learning track and one is the little kid track. And that is the one that I will be going into detail about in this video. Now, before I get into a lot of detail about what I'm going to be doing, I thought that I would talk a little bit about me and kind of where I'm at in life and education and how I got here. So I'm a 46-year-old homeschooling mom of 9 children. I still have 4 that I'm homeschooling. They are 17 down to 13, and my oldest is 26. So I've been homeschooling for about 23 years, since I was about 23 years old myself, actually. I've only got about 6 years left of homeschooling, and so as I'm sort of watching that milestone approach and watching my children quickly grow up and take on, lives of their own, I'm finding that I really want to make sure that I have some things that I can step into so that I'm just not sitting here thinking, where did everything go, right? And being sort of, I just don't want to go through a really dark time of mourning because I've been doing this mothering gig since I was 19 years old and I just don't want to be wondering what's out there, right? And so I am setting myself up with some things to walk into, which in some cases I'm sort of already stepping into just more of my own, just interests and hobbies and directions and learning and travel and creativity and that kind of stuff. So I feel really good about that, just kind of looking ahead of what sort of things would I like to do if I had more time, right? Because here pretty shortly I'm gonna have a lot more time. And even now, right, I have way more time than I did 10 years ago. As a homeschooling mom, you can imagine that education is super important to me, and it is. And my kids' education is important to me, but my own education is also important to me. And once I finish schooling all of them, my education is going to be more important to me. And so I really want to focus on that. I love to read and write. I love to sort of, write about what I read and research and bring out new ideas about things and just creatively think about things and dig deep into stuff. I love that. That is my greatest, most wonderful hobby. But I wasn't always like this. I think that I've always loved school, but I haven't always loved learning. So I just want to talk for a minute about that. I was a really super smart little kid. My mom played school with my brother and I on our off time. And I started kindergarten a year early because I went in and read to the teacher. I was really smart in grade school. I was usually considered the smartest or one of the most smartest kids in the class. Plus, I was a really fun, sort of snarky, funny little kid, so I really was most of my teacher's pet. Not bragging, that's just the truth of it. I was a really charismatic kid and I had a lot going for me, right? So the teachers would bring that out. They would continuously tell me that. They would continuously make me the example. They would tell my parents how great I was. And what did my parents do? They always told me how great I was. And everybody was always telling me how great I was, which is really great, except for the kind of kid that I was, right? With certain personalities, that kind of attention and constant affirmation, it can make a kid really cocky, right? It can make you, among other things, but it also can make you really bored with learning. There wasn't a lot of challenge for me as a grade school kid. They put me in the back of the room with flashcards and have me learn big vocabulary. There was a talented and gifted group that I would go to once a month with a couple other kids in my grade level, and we'd go and learn cool things like robotics and how to make claymation videos. And remember, this was the late 80s. And just how to publish a book, and we'd get to tour certain things, do field trips and things, and just kind of the special stuff saved aside for the really smart kids and to give us a little bit of a challenge that the school wasn't giving us on a daily basis. And I'm thankful for all of that. I had some great opportunities and I really am thankful for that. But some of the problems that come with that is, for one thing, it made me kind of feel like I was in a race to always keep up that spot of being the smartest kid in the class. I had another friend, her name was Hillary, and she was also really, really smart. And we were kind of smart in different ways. And so there wasn't a lot of competition because she was the more kind of like mathy, sciencey, numbers smart. And then I was kind of the more creative, writing, reading, imagination smart. And so we kind of made a really great pair, but we were at odds in some ways all throughout our grade school years, just because who is going to be the smartest today? So it wasn't about learning for the sake of learning and loving learning. It was about memorizing things as fast as you can so you can still, be the fastest, be the first one done, the first one to answer the questions, the first one to turn in your paper, and all the things to be the first one. And a lot of times we did that just because when we were done and the teacher still had, all this time left to work with the other students, she really didn't know what to do with us. So we got to read a lot, and that was pretty great too. But what I found as I moved into middle school was that eventually you do hit a wall. You do eventually hit your level of understanding, and then things can get really tough if you don't know how to learn, if you don't understand how to teach yourself the stuff you need to know. And I didn't know how to do that, and it got really hard. I didn't learn how to learn, and so I just started setting aside everything that didn't come easy to me. But the problem was that all of my grade school, academic records had followed me into middle school. And so the teachers knew that I was known to be a very smart student, very quick, quick understanding, getting my stuff done fast, whatever. And so there was all this, attempts at counseling me. Well, what's wrong? What happened to her? Something's wrong. There must be something mental, emotional going on. There must be, maybe she's in trouble. Maybe she's, doing drugs. Maybe she's like, there's all this stuff, right? So then there's all this other kind of crazy stuff on top of that, of everybody trying to figure out how come I'm not acting as smart as I used to act. I wasn't meeting the expectations that people had for me. And there was no one on the planet that was more freaked out about that than me, right? Because suddenly I'm realizing there's other smart people. Wow, I'm not the only one. And there's people smarter than me. And I got really lost and really freaked out. And for a time there, I even stopped loving school. But with the things that came easy to me, I did really quickly and excelled in. But the things that did not come easy to me, I had the aptitude there to learn it, but no desire because I didn't know how to study. I didn't understand how to read for the sake of retaining the information that you're reading. It didn't click. And fast forward for spoilers, it didn't click until I was in my 30s. So I was basically a person who knew a lot of random facts that didn't actually go together, who knew how to memorize for a test and sort of fake her way through school to graduate with honors, even though she was flunking math and science. And when I got to college, I did not know how to learn or how to teach myself, and they sure weren't going to hold my hand. Shortly into my college years, I did choose to get married. I got married at 18 to my high school sweetheart, and we've been married for 28 years now, and it's been great. I would not go back. I'm so thankful. But in homeschooling these kids for the last couple of decades, I have learned a lot about myself and just the learning styles of people and recognizing all of the stuff I just told you about. I have little by little been trying to climb out of that as I have learned along with my kids the stuff that they're learning. And that is the great thing about homeschooling. You don't have to have, a lot of teacher training, and you don't have to know a whole lot of stuff because you're basically starting at preschool and learning right alongside your children with a much more mature, understanding and having already gone through all of that yourself to some degree. But homeschooling actually is a really great way to teach yourself all the stuff you missed out on. As my own reading comprehension has grown throughout the last couple of decades, I've noticed spots where I'm understanding things that I didn't understand 10 years ago. And 10 years ago, I was understanding things that I hadn't understood 10 years before that. And so I am thankful that our brains and our comprehension levels do continue to grow, even after school, as we age. But as I try to read harder and harder stuff, I more and more recognize the gaps in my learning. For instance, just a couple of months ago, I was trying to read, those writings by Dostoevsky that I was talking about, and I didn't have a clue. Like, I understood the words that were coming out of his mouth, but I didn't have the context. I didn't know about the history of his country. I didn't know about the history of him. I didn't understand that he was responding to another piece of literature. I didn't understand pretty much anything. And so I took a really shallow view of what I was reading, and I just thought, wow, what a depressed, grumpy guy. Like, that, totally not what we're supposed to be getting out of his writing at all. But I didn't have the context to understand it. And that's fine. Like, nobody knows everything. But I'm just noticing that more and more. Much of our, what we call classics, understanding those books, much of it relies on at least knowing some basics of Greek and Roman mythologies and ancient history, especially anything from like the 17th through the 19th century. They really brought out the fact that they had been classically educated. And you really pick up on things when you're constantly having to put the book down to Google a term, a word, a reference, a mythological person or historical event. Now, because I am a fairly intelligent person and I am an academically minded person, I have been able to keep up well with my kids' homeschooling, and even to the point of developing curriculum for them. I've developed a lot of curriculum that maybe someday I will actually put that out there for other homeschoolers to use. But so I have a lot of faith in my ability now to teach myself the stuff that I want to know. And so I'm getting started here at the basic level with some preschool stuff from one of my favorite homeschool curriculum suppliers. Now, for the most part, my academic, life and this life of self-learning that I'm trying to create for myself is purely for my own self-fulfillment, right? I'm not planning on stepping into any kind of career once my children are done schooling. I'm planning on just hanging out here in this home and doing a lot of the stuff that I've been doing all my adult years, but in my free time, focusing a lot on self-education. Like I said, I might develop some more curriculum to put out there. I might just assist my adult children in homeschooling their own kids. I might write books. I have no idea what I'm going to do with it, but I don't plan on using it for, a career or anything. So what I learn and the swiftness at which I learn it really doesn't matter. It's up to me and my own interests. And so I'm starting with a curriculum that is available online for free. It's called Ambleside Online. It is a curriculum that has been developed by homeschool moms, and it is based on the Charlotte Mason method of teaching. I won't go into all the details on that, but it is basically creating an atmosphere where your whole life is an educational experience. You're learning from real life situations. You're learning from nature. You're learning from what we call living books. So things that, are rich with language, rich with storytelling, rich with atmosphere, rich with beautiful illustrations and beautiful ideas. And it's pretty much the exact opposite of everything that I ever did in school as far as memorizing this stuff really fast so you can take a test and be done. It's just about learning, like, how do you fit into the world, right? What is your reason for being here? How can you bless the lives of other people? And being able to just recognize the richness and the beauty in every experience. It's really what we're seeing kind of as a movement right now, right? With all these, cottage life videos and, attempts at living simply and holistically. That's really at the heart of the Charlotte Mason way of learning. And so the way that we have done that is by reading a lot and talking about what we read. And maybe writing about what we read, maybe creating something based on what we read. But it really is a literature-based way of learning. And by incorporating the stuff that we're reading about, learning about, hearing about, incorporating that into our life, we are actually digesting it, right? We're actually learning it. We're making it a part of the vast library of our minds. And it's not something that just kind of goes in one ear and out the other and stays in your brain long enough for you to complete the test, right? And get your grade and move forward. So this online curriculum, Ambleside Online, has a schedule and book list. for every year from 0 to 12. Take a look at the page. You'll see kind of what I'm talking about much better than I'm explaining it here. But the curriculum kind of centers on historical timelines. So you go from ancient times to modern, and then somewhere around, what is it, like the end of 6th grade, beginning of 7th grade, you start over again with ancient times and you go up to modern times by the time you graduate. So you go through the entire span of history twice, from a grade school level and then from a high school level. And that's just fantastic, right? It does fill in so many of those gaps. You do learn about Greek and Roman mythologies. You learn about ancient histories. You learn about Bible histories. You learn about pagan history. You just learn about all kinds of culture and all kinds of, things in the world, right? Nature and other sciences, math, logic, social interaction, like just everything you can think of. So I'm going to start going through those years. Now, I didn't start this program until my kids were about the grade 5, grade 6 level. And so we've only done maybe like grade 5 through grade 10 because we just do it real slow. We only school a few days a week and then we take long breaks. But I want to start down with a preschool level and just go all the way through this. So it's going to take me many years. So my goal here is to read the preschool list, appreciate, research the stuff I want to research, and then move on, right? I'm not going to spend a ton of time on the levels that I'm just doing mostly for appreciation. It's not that I'm not going to learn anything in preschool, but I think it's going to be my own side trip sort of researches, right? And not necessarily from the picture books that I'm reading. But I could be wrong. Maybe I will completely surprise myself. My plan is to write at least a paragraph about everything that I read, doing some kind of narration back, whether it's an oral narration or written narration, is really essential in this way of learning because that is how we kind of cement what we've learned, right? And if you are the instructor of the children, it's how you can tell they actually read the book, right? We don't need to test when they can literally repeat back to us what it is that they read. So I am going to be doing written narrations, and I'll probably talk to my husband about stuff, right, in an oral narration sort of way, just as we're chatting. But I plan to write at least a paragraph, and then some things I will want to research a little bit further, and some things I will already know some extra information on. For instance, there are a lot of Beatrix Potter books in the preschool curriculum, and I have read biographical information on her. So as I'm writing out my narration, I can include that information, about Beatrix Potter and maybe even look up some stuff, whatever. And then other things I might want to look up in more detail. Maybe when I'm reading Aesop's Fables, I want to look up who was Aesop? How were those fables collected? How far back do we know that they go? Also, what kind of cultures did these come from? And, just stuff like that. How are they used in modern media? And just do some deep dive. That's the kind of stuff that we take the time to think about. That's how we really learn and get these things into our minds for good, right? But as I go through these years, at some point I am going to hit a great big wall. Some things I am going to hit a wall earlier than others, right? And my goal is when I hit that wall, instead of, faking it long enough to jump over it, I'm going to stop and really learn the stuff, right? Take the time to really learn the stuff. There is a caveat in there. Some things I think just aren't important enough to learn. Like if I just don't understand physics, it's okay. Because if I haven't needed advanced physics by the time I'm 46 years old, I don't really know if I'm going to need advanced physics in the future. So some things I may skip over, right, if I'm just not getting it, but I'm going to give it a really, really good try and try and see if I can fill in a bunch of those gaps in my learning. Overall, I think really it's just going to make for a more fulfilling experience for myself in the future as far as self-education, self-learning goes, as far as the things that I can read and understand, how I see the world, how I understand people, right? I think it's going to be really fulfilling. So I want to show you guys the books that I have for my preschool education experience. I am going to put the link to that website down in the description box. You guys can check that out. The curriculum is free. All of the schedules, book lists, explanations, everything you need to do this curriculum for the entire span of preschool to 12th grade is all there on the site. Many of the books have links, have Project Gutenberg or, similar links to them, because much of the stuff that you're reading are things that are in the public domain, that are, older classic sort of books. There's a big emphasis on that. So everything you need as far as knowing how to do the, program, I guess, if you will, is there on that site. Much of what you will need as far as resources is there on that site. And then all you need to do is fill in the gaps of what books you don't have access to online or that you don't already have in your own personal library, and then, acquire those books. Much of them can be found at the library. A lot of them can be found online, either on eBay or Facebook groups. There are Facebook groups specifically for Ambleside curriculum. Any Charlotte Mason groups will have a lot of these books. You'll find them at thrift shops, yard sales, because they're popular classic books. So then when you fill in all those gaps or whatever on your book list, you probably won't find yourself purchasing too many books if you don't want to, right? Especially in the younger grade levels. For me, I really just want the library of books. They are really rich, important books, and I might want to reread them again in the future. All right, so here are the books that I'm going to be going through for my preschool. So the first little selection here are the Winnie the Pooh books. There's Winnie the Pooh and the House at Pooh Corner. There's a third one called When We Were Very Young, which I have on order from eBay. It should be here soon. And then Now We Are Six. So of these, I only had to buy this one and the eBay one because these I already had because I read them with my son a few years ago. Now, even though I've already read through some of these, I am going to go back and reread just for fun, right? And for my own enjoyment. There's only a couple of things on this whole book list that I've decided not to read at all. And they're just things that I didn't have. And when I got to look at them, I was like, they aren't old enough for me. Like, there's a couple of books in there that are from the 80s. They might be classics to some people, but they're not classic enough for me. And I just didn't really want to read them. And so, but for the most part, I'm reading everything on the list and rereading most everything. The only thing I'm not rereading are the Just So stories by Rudyard Kipling. And I love them. I adore the Just So stories. However, I have such great memories, and I had just a little memory in my head that I really can't get out of there, of one of my daughters who is now almost 15 years old, but her sweet little 6-year-old self, just laughing, giggling, the look on her face, everything of her and I reading these stories together. And I just don't want to replace that memory, right? I just want to keep that memory of her and I enjoying those together and just the delight she got out of how silly they were. So I'm not rereading those for my own memories' sake. I don't want to make new memories, right? So anyway, back to the book list. So the next set of books are the Beatrix Potter series. And so I've read this entire book with one of my daughters, but there are some stories in here that I will reread from, the list. It's my little preschool list here. And then I did need to purchase a couple that I didn't have. So this is The Tale of Mrs. Tittlemouse and Other Stories. This Beatrix Potter Treasury has some of the same stories as the other one, but then it has some that the other one doesn't have, that I also didn't have. So I went ahead and got that one too. And then these 4 little ones I already had. The Tailor of Gloucester, The Tale of Little Pig Robinson, The Tale of Benjamin Bunny, and The Tale of the Flopsy Bunnies. There is a selection of picture books, and honestly, most of these I had not read before. Most of the picture book type books that I read to my kids were books that I had when I was a kid, so it's kind of like living nostalgia. And then they got a ton of books from the library. When they were little, we went to the library all the time, and so a lot of the books that are on this list we didn't actually have. And I think, honestly, that's a whole other tangent. Do I have time for a tangent? I'm just going to go real quick. So I have had an aversion to, what is this, Caldecott honor books, Newbery, anything that like has some kind of an award. I have had, what's this one? Oh, that's Caldecott also. I have had an aversion to, and I know that sounds really silly, but in my grade school years, those were all of the books that I was supposed to read as a smart kid. And I wanted to read Sweet Valley High and Babysitter's Club. And so that's what I did on my off time. But I, was supposed to read and appreciate these books just because, it was the age of reading Rainbow, and, Nancy Reagan was it that was promoting literacy, or maybe it was Barbara Bush. Anyway, one of them really heavily promoting literacy. And it was just kind of in our face. And I grew up in a house of books. There was constantly books in my, path. I was never short on books. And so I think that I got frustrated at teachers trying to like make me read these things. And I wasn't interested in reading those. I wanted to read what I wanted to read. My mom really had some lines that I had to stay within when I was a little kid as far as what I could and couldn't do. She was very protective, but when it came to books, I could read whatever I wanted. I don't ever remember my mom saying, you can't read that, or don't read that, or you should read this. Like, never. I never remember that. And so I had a really healthy view of reading and books, right? Because I could read whatever I wanted. And all I had to do was just say, Mom or Grammy, I need a book. And I'd get the book, right? Because my family really valued reading. So anyway, that was just a little tangent. But I think that I haven't picked up a lot of these books for my kids because I just didn't want to put them through that. And they were all books that I remember being pushed on me. Okay, back to the list. This has been kind of therapeutic, actually. Yeah, I think I'm going to make this a series. All right, so Frances, there's like a whole list of these Frances books. I got one. I'll read that one. One Morning in Maine, which I'm actually excited about reading because my family's from Maine. I've never been there, but The Little Engine That Could, which I remember reading that to some of my kids and loving that one. This one's called Roxaboxen, and the only reason that I really have a lot of faith in this book is because there's another one on this list that I adore by the same illustrator. So I'm gonna love that just because I love Barbara Cooney as an illustrator. This one's called Stone Soup. I remember this. I remember not wanting to read it. Blueberries for Sal. The Story of Ferdinand. I only remember this one from reading Rainbow. There's something about that episode that stuck with me, I guess. Oh, this one's The Ox Cart Man, and I just realized it's also illustrated by Barbara Cooney. I've had this book for 20 years. I've never opened it. Make Way for Ducklings. And if you notice, there are multiple books by the same author. There's another Robert McCloskey book in this pile. The Story About Ping. This is the one. Miss Rumphius. Oh, I love this book. The story and the illustrations are by Barbara Cooney. This is such a fabulous book. I love this so much. I read this with my children for the first time probably 15 years ago. And I've read it a few times since. I think we're due for a reread, actually. I love this book. All right, and then Paul Revere's Ride, which is, the Longfellow poem. This one is The Little House. And then another Longfellow poem, Hiawatha. So those are all the picture books. Another part of the book list features poetry collections, and specific illustrators to those poetry collections. Most of them I have or was able to obtain. A couple of them I'm just kind of winging it. It's fine. So this one is called Poems to Read to the Very Young. Poems and Prayers for the Very Young. And then it's a Depict a Poetry collection with good illustrations. This one, my book of poems, little golden book. I think it has cute illustrations. It's basically, you know, you're introducing kids to rhyme, and I've never liked poetry, but I'm gonna like these. I'm gonna do it. This one is My Shadow by Robert Louis Stevenson. And when I was in the 5th grade, I think, we did a poem party where all of us kids had to memorize a poem. And then we put on a little tea party thing for our parents. They could come and listen to us all get up and recite our poems in the music room at our school. And I think there was like refreshments, if I remember right. But you know, it was a really dressy thing. I remember getting all dressed up, or maybe that was just my mom dressing me all up because she liked to do that. She literally picked out my clothes until I was like in the 6th grade. Put them on the back of the couch every morning before school. Remember that, Mom? It was very particular, right? But anyway, we made these like illustrations. You know, we held up a picture. We had like these long pieces of construction paper, and on the side that we held up while we were reading our poem was a illustration that we made to go with the poem. And then on the back of the page was the poem, just in case we messed up. We could look down at it, which I thought was really kind of our teacher to do instead of making us memorize them and then mess up everywhere. So we chose My Shadow because that was something I guess that my great-grandmother had memorized in school. I vaguely remember it being something like that. And so anyway, that was what I memorized. So this book will be special to me, and apparently it's out of print. So I got it on eBay. So I was glad to find that old library version of that. And then it's said to find an Oxford collection of children's poetry. I found Oxford's Book of Children's Verse in America, which I thought would be great because, you know, for the most part, my studies are mostly English literature. And so, and then again, another probably school-induced aversion to American literature and American poetry. So this one will be good because it's specifically American poets. All right, and then finally, there are some story collections, which for the most part, I'm just going to be reading portions of these collections rather than the entire thing. There are the Uncle Remus stories, which I think these are like Brer Rabbit and Brer Fox. Pretty sure that's what these stories are. I kind of remember that from like Disney Channel or something when we were kids. Wasn't it Uncle Remus was a black man and he was telling these Brer Rabbit stories? Was that Disney Channel? Like, what was that? What am I thinking of? Help me out here, guys. I'm going to have to look that up later. But anyway, I'm going to read some stories out of this one. There's actually a recommended reading list here for which stories are highly recommended from there. So I'll probably read those at least. And then there are these nature stories by Thornton W. Burgess. And I have a whole bunch of these. And I have a bunch of really like vintage copies of these stories. But I'm just going to read these two, I think. I'll read at least one. But there's The Adventures of Danny Meadow Mouse and The Adventures of Bobby Raccoon. There are the Little Bear stories. Oh, memories of the Little Bear. So all these different stories about Little Bear, which I adore Little Bear. And then same thing with Frog and Toad. So I've got some Frog and Toad stories here. Read those. One of the things on the list was to read like some folk tales. And so I have this book that my mom actually got me as a Tooth Fairy gift when I was 10, I guess. To Sarah, happy birthday from the Tooth Fairy. So she must have had this on like in her closet of things to give me for my birthday that year. And then I happened to lose a tooth the night before my birthday. And so I got a present from the Tooth Fairy, which I thought was super cool at 10 years old. And I still believed in the Tooth Fairy. And then, you know, presents from my parents. So that's cool. The other thing that's funny about this book is that it is, the binding is put up on upside down. See, you got to turn it over to read it correctly, which I think is funny, obviously not on purpose. And there was no way that I ever was going to tell my mom that, because I didn't want to hurt her feelings when I was a little kid. So there you go, Mom. Now you know. The binding on this book is upside down. So speaking of folktales, there is this folktale, The Tale of the Three Trees. And this is another book that my mom got me. This one she got me in 2006. So I was like, would that make me 27 in this when she got me this? And this one she got me from the Christmas cottage in Lincoln City on the coast in Oregon. And this is a really sweet story. So I'm looking forward to reading that again. It's been a really long time since I read that. The Winkin', Blinkin' and Nod nursery rhymes. And then the Real Mother Goose. And this is the version that was on the list with this illustrator. A collection of Aesop's Fables, illustrated by Milo Winter. You can see why. Beautiful, beautiful illustrator. This book was my son's favorite book when he was about 9 or 10. He loved Aesop's Fables. I only assigned him a few of them, but he asked if he could read the whole thing. I'm like, sure. He read the whole thing. Then I bought him his own copy. Actually, I gave him that copy and bought my own because he loved it so much. On that one and the Mother Goose one, I'm only going to read like, I don't know, maybe 10 fables, 10 rhymes. I might read more, as time goes on, but I'm not like requiring myself to read that entire collection. For one thing, I think I'll appreciate it more if I just pick out a few, right? And also, like I said, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this preschool level curriculum. I do want to move through it fairly quickly so that I can get up to some of the meatier stuff. But I wanted to start at the beginning because I didn't want to leave anything out. And I think that will be just a really fun introduction, right? A sweet introduction to do it at a very gentle, basic level, right? Okay, and then finally, the last book on the list is A Children's Garden of Verses by Robert Louis Stevenson. And there were several different options for illustrators on that list. I have maybe 4 different versions of that collection. I don't know why. They just appear in my life. But 2 of the illustrators I did have on my list, and they are 2 of my very favorite illustrators. So the first one is Jessie Wilcox Smith. And she's her illustrations are so, like, Edwardian? Just so neat. I don't know how to explain it. So anyway, that's that one. And then the other one that I have is the same title, illustrated by Tasha Tudor. Oh, this book is just a gem. Like, just look at that. It's so much just filling in all the things. I have so many books, classic books that I love, illustrated by her. The Secret Garden and The Little Princess. And they're all just so beautiful and just so detailed and colorful. And Tasha Tudor's artistic mind was a treasure for sure. This one, the swing. So I'm really going to enjoy preschool, I am sure. I will keep you guys updated. I think I probably will make this into a series and just call it like the self-educated mom files or something like that, and just keep you guys kind of updated. I hope that this inspires you guys, encourages you. I would love to know if there's anybody out there who is also kind of on a self-education path. What kind of stuff are you doing? Is this something that interests you? And if so, do you have like anything holding you back? Like I felt that I have had holding me back from just real actual learning over the years. Anyway, let's talk about it in the comments section. I hope everybody is doing good, and I will see you soon. Bye-bye.